So, Rick looks at her as she holds gauze on his upper arm, sealing the injection site. What's with you two? Are you guys together? She smiles wistfully, as though amused by a private joke. No. I think he wishes we were, and honestly, he's a nice man. Very nice, actually, and I do like him. She shrugs, dumping the used vial into a waste receptacle, lowering Rick's sleeve. But I don't care if it is the end of the world. He's too old for me. The man's face softens. So you're single? Alice pauses, giving him a look. Yes, but I'm not looking for anyone, and you've got a ring on your finger, so... She stops herself. Is your wife still alive? I'm so sorry that she is, he sighs. It's okay. And don't worry, I'm just trying to make conversation. I'm sorry if I sounded like I was... Another sigh. So you're a doctor too? A nurse, paramedic, something like that? She goes over to a cluttered desk which is pushed up against the wall. She writes something in a log. Actually, I was going to college to become an interior designer when the biters, zombies, whatever, made other plans for me. I didn't really know any of this stuff a few months ago. But now? How did you learn this stuff? The injured man seems genuinely interested, if only in an idle, chatting around the coffee urn kind of way. Did Dr. Stevens teach you? Mostly, yeah, she says with a nod, still writing notes on inventory, medicine dispensed, supply levels. In Woodbury, every commodity is limited, especially medicine. So Stevens has instituted a meticulous record system with which Alice religiously keeps up. In the pause that follows, the oncoming footsteps have reached the corridor outside the infirmary. Still distant enough to be inaudible to Rick and Alice, they approach quickly, purposefully, urgently. I've always been a quick learner, Alice is saying. Ever since I was a little girl. To be honest, I really just have to watch him do something once, maybe twice, and I can pretty much do it. Rick smiles. Well, I'm impressed. Don't be. She gives him a flinty look. I don't consider paying attention to be something special just because most other people don't do it. She pauses and lets out a sigh. Did that sound mean? Did it make me sound like a bitch? I do that a lot. Sorry about that. Think nothing of it, Rick says, his smile lingering. I didn't take it that way. And you're right, by the way. He looks down at his thickly bandaged stump. Most people don't pay attention to anything. He looks at her. They just cruise through life worrying so much about their own bullshit. They don't even notice the things that are happening around them. He glances back down at his injury and lets out a dry little grunt. She looks at him. What is it? I miss my wife, he says softly, gazing down. I can't stop thinking about her. A long pause and then... She's pregnant. Alice stares. Really? Rick nods. Yeah. She's due in a couple months. Last time I saw her, she was doing fine. He swallows hard. The thing about the baby, though, I don't know if... Across the room, the door bursts open, cutting off his words. Rick, get up! Now! The man barging into the infirmary wears a faded bandana, carries a high-powered rifle, and has muscular arms protruding from his sleeveless shirt, which is stained under the arms with flop sweat. Come on! We gotta go! The man urges as he hurries over to Rick, grabbing him by the arm. Right now! What the fuck are you doing? Rick rears back, pulling himself away from this crazy person. Alice backs away too, wide-eyed. Martinez drills his gaze into Rick's eyes. I'm saving your life. Rick blinks. What do you mean? How are you saving my life? I'm getting you out of here. I'm helping you escape. Come on! Let go of me, goddammit! Rick yanks his arm away, heart racing. Martinez raises his hand in a gesture of contrition. Okay, look. I'm sorry. Okay? It's just that we need to hurry. It's not gonna be easy getting you out of here without anyone noticing. Listen to what I'm saying. I'm gonna get you out of here, but I can't steal a vehicle. We only keep a couple gassed up and they're too hard to get without being detected. Rick and Alice shoot panicked glances at each other, and then Rick looks back at Martinez. Why are you... If they notice you're gone before we're far enough away, they'll be able to run us down. We gotta get out of here without anyone knowing it for a long time. Martinez looks at Alice, then back at Rick. Now come on, let's go! Rick takes a deep breath, a barrage of contrary emotions slamming through him, before giving the man a terse, reluctant nod. He looks at Alice, and then back at Martinez, who turns and starts toward the door. Wait! Rick grabs Martinez on the way out of the room. They told me there are guards posted at the door. How are we going to get past them? Martinez almost smiles in spite of the adrenaline. We already took care of them. We? Rick follows him out the door at a fast trot, plunging into the corridor. Left alone inside the room, Alice gapes at the open doorway. Creeping cautiously down the central corridor, avoiding pools of light from hanging work lamps, descending stairs to the next level down and making 2 quick turns, Martinez silently prays nobody sees them. Only he and the governor know about this whole scam, and people like Gabe and Bruce are partial to shooting first and asking questions. Well, never. Martinez silently raises his hand in a warning gesture as they approach one of the stalls. The 2 men pause in front of a security door. I think you've met my associate, Martinez whispers to Rick, quickly opening the metal door. Inside the dim enclosure, a pair of bodies lie sprawled unconscious on the cement floor. They are a couple of the governor's men, Denny and Lou, both of them bruised and battered, but still breathing shallow breaths. A third figure in riot gear stands over them, fists balled, breathing hard, a nightstick in one hand. Glenn! Rick lurches suddenly into the room and goes to the younger man. Rick! Jesus, you are alive! The young Asian in the black SWAT-style body armor gives the other man a hug. With his round and boyish face, dark almond eyes, and short-cropped haircut, the young man could pass for a buck private in the army just out of basic training. Or maybe a Boy Scout, Martinez thinks to himself from the doorway, as the 2 men have their little tearful reunion. I thought you were dead, man, the younger one says to the older one. Martinez told me he saw you, but I don't know, I guess I didn't believe it until now. The kid looks at Rick Stump. Jesus, Rick, there was so much blood. I'm okay, Rick says, looking down, holding the bloody streaked bandage against his midsection. I guess I'm lucky this is the only thing that freak took from me. What about you? He pats the kid's Kevlar shoulder pad. They told me they let you go. That you told them everything about the prison and they were going to follow you there. The kid lets out a burst of nervous laughter, which sounds more like a hyperventilating dog to Martinez. Man, they never even asked me any questions. Something changes in his face. Eyes narrowing, jaws clamped tightly, he looks down. Rick, I spent a day locked in a garage next to another garage with Michonne in it. Another pause here, the boy's eyes watering with repulsion. Rick. The young man pauses again, looking like he can hardly draw a breath, let alone explain what's been going on. From across the room, Martinez soaks it all in. This is the first time he has heard the black woman's name, and for some reason the sound of it, Michonne, makes him nervous. He can't understand why exactly. Rick pats the young man's shoulder. It's okay, Glenn. We're gonna get her and us out of here. Rick, I love Maggie, the kid finally says, looking up at the older man through wet eyes. I don't want to put anyone in danger. But the things I heard, the things they must have done to Michonne. He stops again. He looks at Rick and says in a quavering voice, I think I might have told them anything to make them stop. He sniffs back the shame. But they never even asked. Pause, anger flaring. It's like they did it all just to fuck with me. It's time for Martinez to step in and get this fucking show on the road. That sounds about right, he says, his voice going low and grave. He gives both men a sullen look as he continues. Philip, the governor, whatever you want to call him, he's been slowly going over the edge for a while now. I've been hearing about the shit he's been doing, whispers, rumors. Didn't want to believe it was true. Martinez takes a deep breath. You kind of choose to ignore that stuff. Keeps you from having to do anything. After seeing you, he gives Rick a nod. I suspected the accident that took your hand was related to him. Across the room, Rick and Glenn give each other a look. Something unspoken passes between them, and Martinez notices it, but doesn't react. He asked me to fill in for his guards, Martinez goes on in a lower voice. Watch the garage he was keeping Glenn in. I didn't know he was keeping prisoners in here. I mostly work security. All my time was spent on the fences. Another breath. He looks at the two men across the room. I couldn't let it go on. I had to help put a stop to this fucking insanity. He looks at the floor. We're still human, goddammit. Rick is thinking about it, licking his lips pensively, the lines on his face deepening. He looks at Glenn. My goddamn clothes. He looks at Martinez. My clothes. He shakes his head. We were wearing riot gear, and when the doctor was working on me, someone had to see what I was wearing underneath. He shakes his head slowly, looking at the crumbling mortar walls, the arteries of rust or blood veining the corners. Christ, he utters. The younger man looks at him. What do you mean? The jumpsuit. The orange jumpsuit, Rick mutters. That's how he knew about the prison. How could I be so fucking stupid? Come on. Martinez has heard enough. The clock is ticking. We've got to get out of here. Rick nods at Glenn, and the younger man flips down his visor. And then the threesome slip out of the room and start down the corridor toward the ramp. For almost 10 excruciating minutes now, in the lowest level of the sub-basement, Bruce and Gabe haven't budged from their places against the gritty cinder block wall adjacent to the holding chamber. The governor paces in front of them, wielding the katana sword, moving in and out of pools of dirty light from 100-watt safety bulbs, mumbling to himself, his eyes glassy with rage and madness. Every few moments, the muffled voice of the woman, barely audible behind the rolling door of the service area, murmurs cryptically. Who the hell is she talking to? What kind of malfunction is rotting this lady's brain? Bruce and Gabe await their orders, but decisions are not exactly forthcoming. The governor looks as though he's battling his own demonic voices, trying to cut both the air and his problems to shreds with the saber, every once in a while snarling a garbled, enraged, Fuck. How the fuck could this... At one point, Gabe ventures a suggestion. Hey, boss, why don't we focus on them prisons down by Albany? There's a bunch of them over by... Shut the fuck up! The governor paces. I've got to round up new biters for the fights now. I've got to find new fighters. Fuck! Bruce chimes in. Boss, what if we fuck? He swings the sword at the air. That fucking bitch! He turns to the garage door and slams his boot as hard as he can against the rusty metal panels. The thing booms, leaving a dent the size of a pig belly. Gabe and Bruce jerk at the noise. Fuck! The governor turns to them. Open it up! Bruce and Gabe exchange a quick, heated glance, and then Bruce goes to the door, kneeling and grasping the lower edge in both hands. I want to see your fucking guts spill out all over the ground, damn it! The governor growls. The door squeals up and the governor twitches, as though a bolt of electrical current is coursing through him. Stop! Bruce freezes with the door half up, his big hands welded to the edge. Both he and Gabe twist around and gaze at their boss. Close it, the governor says, his voice back to normal as though a switch has been thrown. Bruce looks at him. Sure, boss. But why? The governor rubs the bridge of his nose, rubs his eyes. I'm going to... The men wait. Another fleeting glance exchanged. Bruce finally licks his lips. You okay, boss? I'm sleeping on this one, he says softly. I don't want to do anything I'll regret later. He exhales a long breath, stretching his neck muscles. Then he turns and starts walking away. I gotta go over all the angles, he mutters as he departs, not even looking at them. I'll be back in a few hours. He vanishes around the corner at the end of the corridor, passing out of the gloomy light like a phantom. Wait! The voice pops out of the shadows behind the escapees, from the depths of the corridor. And at first Martinez is sure they're busted, and his plan has gone all to hell before they even had a chance to take a single step outside. Please stop! The three men jerk to a stop near two intersection tunnels, the back of Martinez's neck prickling. They whirl around one by one, Martinez, then Rick, and then Glenn, each man breathing hard, hearts pumping, trembling hands going for the grips of their firearms and weapons. They squint to see who it is, a shadowy figure approaching quickly, passing under a yellow cone of light. Hold on, the young woman says, the light illuminating the crown of her head, the shimmer of blonde hair in a French braid, the tendrils hanging down across a girlish face. Her lab coat positively glows in the dull light of the passageway. She approaches out of breath. Rick speaks up. What is it, Alice? What do you want? I was thinking about it, she says in a shaky voice, catching her breath in the murky, airless tunnel. Somewhere not far from there, one level up, outside the vestibules, the wind hums through empty bleachers and gantries. If you're going, she says, I want you to take us with you. Dr. Stevens and me. The men share tense glances, but nobody offers a response. Alice looks at Rick. Wherever you're living has got to be better than this. And with your wife pregnant, I'm sure you could use us. Rick chews on this for a moment. Then he proffers her a thin smile. I'm not arguing with that. We'd love to have you. In fact, okay, guys and gals, Martinez breaks in, his voice as taut as a piano string. We need to go now. They hurry down a branching tunnel, and then down a long ramp, the clock ticking. They end up in the fetid darkness of the sub-basement. Glenn has a sketchy memory of where Michonne is being kept. He's thrown off a little by all the garage doors that look alike, the maddeningly similar scars of ancient grease and grit, but he remembers being dragged around this sub-level. They eventually find the last narrow warren of service bays and pause. I'm pretty sure it's just around this next corner, Glenn whispers as they huddle in the shadows of two intersecting tunnels. Good, Rick utters softly. We get her, and we get the doctor, and we go. He looks at Martinez. What's the distance to the doc's place and then to the fence? Is there an easy way out? Hold it! Martinez thrusts a gloved hand in the air, his voice a loud stage whisper. Hold on! Quiet! Stay back! He cautiously peers around the corner, then looks back at the group. I'd be shocked as all hell if the governor didn't put a guard where he's got your friend. Rick starts to say, Why don't we... Running up there ain't the best of ideas, Martinez cautions. Unless you want to get shot. Everyone here knows me. I'll go on, then call you guys up when I finish. Nobody argues. Martinez takes a deep breath, brushes himself off, and then walks around the corner, leaving the three outcasts to huddle together nervously in the darkness of the tunnel. Glenn looks at Alice. Hi, I'm Glenn. It's Alice, she says with a jittery smile. Nice to meet you. Rick barely hears their exchange. His heart beats in syncopation with the ticking clock in his head. They have one shot. Chapter 15. Hey, what's up, Gabe? Martinez approaches the last garage door with practiced calm, walking up to the stocky guard with a genial smile and wave. He got you down here protecting the gold reserve or something? The portly man in the turtleneck, standing with his back pressed against the rolling door, gives Martinez a grin and a shake of the head. "Not exactly. That bitch who fucked up the fights is in there." Martinez comes up and stands next to the burly man. "Uh-huh. She's a pisser, that one," Gabe says with a smirk. "Boss man ain't taking any chances." Martinez returns the smirk with a lascivious grin of his own. "Think I could have a look? Just a peek? Didn't get a good look at her at the fight. Seemed hot." Gabe's grin widens. "Oh, yeah. She was hot. After the beating the governor threw her, though, the blow comes out of nowhere. A swift, hard-knuckle punch to the portly man's Adam's apple, and it shuts off Gabe's air passage as well as his voice. The stocky man doubles over, gasping for air, shocked senseless. Martinez finishes the job with the butt of his .762 caliber Garand rifle. The blunt end of the stock strikes Gabe squarely on the back of the skull, making a wooden smacking noise. Gabe collapses face down, a trickle of blood from the back of his head already forming in the cement. Martinez calls out over his shoulder, "All clear!" From the shadows at the end of the tunnel, they all come trotting up with eyes wide and adrenaline pumping. Rick takes one look at Gabe, and then turns to Martinez and starts to say something, but Martinez is already crouching by the base of the garage door. "Help me get this door open. It's all dented." "Not opening," he says with a grunt, laboring at the bottom edge of the door with his gloved hands. Rick and Glenn come over and crouch next to him, and it takes all three of them to force the thing up. Hinges squeak and complain as they inch the thing halfway open. They duck under the sprung door, and Rick takes a few steps into the dark, fusty-smelling mortar chamber, freezing in his tracks suddenly, paralyzed by the sight of his friend. Instantly aware on some cellular level in his brain, like a synapse firing, that a war has already begun. The woman on the floor of the dark holding cell, her arms pinioned to the wall, doesn't recognize her friends at first. Long braids hanging down, chest rising and falling with pained, shallow breaths. Blood trails fanning out from her spot across the concrete. She tries to raise her head and gaze through catatonic eyes. "Oh, God." Rick approaches her cautiously, barely getting the words out. "Are you—" She levers her head up and spits at him. He jerks back, instinctively shielding his face. Dehydration and shock and exhaustion have dried her saliva to sawdust. She tries to spit again. "Whoa, Michonne, hold it," Rick says, crouching down in front of her. "It's me." His voice softens. "Michonne, it's Rick." "Rick?" Her voice comes out in a withered, faint, husky whisper. Her eyes struggle to lock onto him. "Rick." "Guys!" Rick rises to his feet and turns to the others. "Help me get her untied." The other three hurry over to the ropes. Alice gently loosens one ankle, while Glenn kneels by the other and struggles with the slip knot, muttering to the woman, "Christ, are you okay?" Another strangled wheeze comes out of the woman. "No, I'm not. Not even close." Rick and Martinez each take a wrist and they start tweezing the knots open. Contrary emotions flow through Martinez as he works on the rope, smelling the poor woman, feeling the fever radiating off her ravaged body. The air reeks of despair, a mixture of body odor, festering wounds, and the spore of violent sex. The woman's pants are tied around her waist with strapping tape, the fabric torn and mottled with wet spots of every description. Blood, tears, semen, sweat, urine, spittle, from days of torture. Her flesh looks scourged, as though somebody applied a belt sander to her arms and legs. Martinez fights the impulse to confess everything to these people, to give up the ruse. His vision blurs. He feels lightheaded, nauseous. Is all this worth a little security for this shitheel town? A minor tactical advantage? What in God's name did this woman do to deserve this? For a moment, Martinez imagines the governor doing this to him. Martinez has never been this confused. The ropes finally come off, and the woman collapses to the floor with a gasp. The others stand back as Michonne writhes for a moment on the floor in a prone position, her forehead pressed against the cement. Rick crouches down by her as she struggles to get a breath, to lift herself up, to get her bearings. He says to her, "Do you need?" The woman on the floor suddenly pushes herself up, rising to her knees. She sniffs back all the agony in one stubborn, loud snort. Rick and the others stare at her. Mesmerized by her sudden reserve of energy, they stand silently around her, not knowing what to say or do. How are they going to get her out of here? She looks like a paraplegic laboring to get out of her wheelchair. All at once she rises to her feet, moving on pure rage now, balling her slender hands into fists. She swallows all the pain and looks around the room. Then she looks at Rick, and her voice takes on the sound of a phonograph playing a scratchy recording. "Let's get the fuck out of here." They don't get very far. Barely making it out of the sub-basement and up a single flight of stairs, they are approaching the end of the main corridor, Michonne in the lead now, when the black woman suddenly shoots her hand up in a warning gesture. "Stop. Someone's coming." The others freeze, pressing in behind her. Martinez shoves his way past the others and steps up beside Michonne, whispering in her ear, "I can handle this. People don't know what I'm doing yet. I'll keep them from seeing you." From around the corner, a shadow looms, a pair of footsteps approaching. Martinez steps out into the shaft of light spilling down on the junction. "Martinez?" Dr. Stevens jerks with a start when he sees the man in the bandana. "What are you doing down here?" Doc, we were on our way to get you." "Is there a problem?" Martinez gives him a hard look. "We're leaving here, this town. We want you to come with us." "What?" Stevens blinks and cocks his head and tries to compute what he's hearing. "Who's we?" Martinez shoots a glance over his shoulder, and he waves the others over. The doctor stares. Rick and Michonne and Glenn, and finally Alice, come sheepishly forward, out of the shadows, and stand in the harsh light of the work lamp. They all stare at the doctor, who stares back at them, processing all this with a somber look on his face. "Hey, Doc," Rick says at last. "What do you say? You with us or not?" The expression on the doctor's face goes through a subtle transformation. His eyes narrow behind his wire-rimmed glasses, and his lips purse thoughtfully for a moment. He looks, just for an instant, as though he's diagnosing a particularly complex set of symptoms. Then he says, "I just need to gather some supplies from the infirmary and then we can go." He gives them his patented sardonic smile. "Won't take a minute." Outside the crumbling gates of the arena, they hurry across the parking lot, avoiding the stares of errant citizens wandering the side streets. The night sky opens up above them, a riot of stars veiled by thin wisps of clouds and no moon in sight. They move single file, quickly, but not so quickly as to make noise or to attract undue attention or to give the appearance of escape. Some of the passers-by wave to them. Nobody recognizes the strangers, Rick and Glenn. But some of the wanderers do double takes when they see the woman in dreadlocks. Martinez keeps them moving. One after another, they hop the railing on the west side of the arena and cross a vacant lot moving toward the main drag. The doctor brings up the rear, clutching his satchel of medical supplies. "What's the fastest way out of here?" Rick asks, already winded and breathing hard as he and Martinez pause to catch their breaths in the shadows of the mercantile building. The others push in behind them. "This way." Martinez indicates the deserted sidewalks on the other side of the street. "Just keep following. I'll get us out of here." They hurl across the street and then plunge into the shadows of the unoccupied sidewalk. The walkway extends at least 4 blocks to the west, running under awnings and overhangs, shrouded in darkness. They hurry single file through the shadows. "The less we're out in the open like this, the better," Martinez comments under his breath to Rick. "We just need to make it to an alley, then get over one of those fences. They're not guarded as much as the front gate. This shouldn't be hard." They cross another half a block when the sound of a voice rings out. "Doctor?" This throws everybody off their stride and raises hackles on the back of Martinez's neck. Everybody staggers to a halt. Martinez turns and sees an unidentified figure coming around the corner of a building behind them. Quickly, instinctively, not even looking, Martinez moves his fingertip toward the rifle's trigger pad, ready for anything. A nanosecond later, Martinez breathes a momentary sigh of relief, releasing pressure on the trigger as he sees one of the town's matrons approaching. "Dr. Stevens?" she calls out in a voice weakened with malnourishment. Stevens whirls. "Oh, hello, Miss Williams." He gives a nervous little nod to the middle-aged hausfrau coming toward him. The others slip deeper into the shadows out of the woman's eye line. The doctor blocks her path. "What can I do for you?" "I'm sorry to bother you like this," she says, hurrying up to him. Dressed in a shapeless, frayed shift with short-cropped hair, she looks up at him through huge, downtrodden eyes. The thickness of her middle and the jowls on her face belie her once youthful beauty. "My son Matthew, he's got a slight fever." "Oh, I'm sure it's nothing, but I don't want to take any chances." "I understand. Do you have any time later?" "Of course, I just, the doctor stammers, and it makes Martinez crazy. Why doesn't he just fucking get rid of her? The doctor clears his throat. Bring him by my office later today, if you could. I'll see him then. I'll make sure to fit him in." "Sure, Are you okay, Dr. Stevens?" She glances at the others lurking in the shadows behind Stevens, and then gives the doctor a quizzical look with those big, sad eyes. "You seem upset." "I'm fine. Really." He clutches the satchel tighter to his chest. I'm in the middle of something right now." He starts to back away from her, which sends a wave of relief down Martinez's midsection. "I don't mean to be rude," Stevens says to the woman, "but I must be going. I'm sorry." The doctor turns and joins the others. Martinez leads the group around a corner and pauses on the edge of the sidewalk for a moment, adrenaline pumping. For a brief instant, he considers cutting Stevens and Alice loose. They know too much, and they're too tied into the community. They could be a huge liability. Worse than that, they may know Martinez a little too well. They could easily see through his gambit. Maybe they have already. Maybe they're just playing along. "Doctor?" Alice goes over to Stevens and puts a hand on his shoulder. Stevens looks crestfallen, rubbing his face. Alice speaks softly. "That woman's son?" "I can't think about that right now," the doctor mutters. "It's just too... I just can't. We have to get out of here. We may not have another chance." He takes a girding breath, looking down, shaking his head. "These people, they'll just have to get along without us." Alice looks at him. "You're right. I know. It's going to be okay." "Hey!" Martinez hisses an urgent whisper at them. "Save it! We don't have time for this right now!" He gets them moving again, down a boardwalk, across another road and down a side street toward the mouth of an alley 200 yards to the south. The hush that has fallen over the town bothers Martinez. He can hear the hum of generators, the rustling of branches against the wall. Their footsteps sound like pistol shots in his ears, the beating of his heart loud enough to lead a marching band. He picks up the pace. The passers-by have dwindled away. They're alone now. Martinez increases his stride from a trot to a steady run, the others struggling to keep up. A moment later, he hears the one named Michonne make a strange comment to somebody behind him. "Stop looking at me like that," she says between heavy breaths as she runs. "Don't worry about me." Glenn's voice is barely audible over the noise of their churning footsteps and heavy panting. "Okay. Sorry. Keep it down." Martinez hisses a breathless whisper at them over his shoulder as they approach the mouth of the alley. Shooting his gloved hand up, he brings the group to a stop and then leads them around the corner of an adjacent building and into the litter-strewn darkness. The alley is bound in thick shadows, sticky with the stench of garbage cans lined along one wall, a single flickering emergency light at the far end providing the only illumination. The beating of Martinez's heart kicks up a degree. He quickly surveys the area. He sees the sentry at the far end of the alley. "Okay, wait here a minute," he says to the others. "I'll be right back." Now Martinez faces another grand performance, a roll within a roll within a roll, as he sniffs back his nerves and starts toward the end of the alley. He can see the young gangbanger on the lift platform 30 yards away, his back turned, an AK in his arms as he stares over a temporary barricade of riveted steel panels. On the other side of the barricade lies the dark outskirts and freedom. Hey, kid! Martinez approaches the sentry with a genial wave. He keeps his voice casual but authoritative, as if giving a pet cat an order to get off the dinner table. I'm taking over for you. The kid flinches with a start, and then he turns and looks down. Hardly out of his teens, with his spindly body decked out in hip-hop regalia, a headband drawn around his jerry curls, he looks as though he's playing cops and robbers on the perch. He also looks slightly stoned and more than a little paranoid. Martinez comes closer. Hand me that rifle and run along. I'll cover the rest of your shift. The kid starts climbing down with a shrug. Sure, man, whatever. He hops to the pavement. But why are you doing this? You need me somewhere else or something? Martinez reaches for the AK in the kid's arms, again with that pet owner tough love in his voice. Don't ask any questions. I'm doing you a favor here. Hand me that gun, thank me, and enjoy your time off. The kid stares at him, handing over the firearm. Sure. The kid walks away, heading back down the alley, mumbling to himself, Whatever, man, it's your show. I just work here. The others huddle behind the adjacent edifice until the sentry has emerged from the alley and sauntered off into the night, muttering an off-key version of some obscure rap tune. They wait until the kid vanishes around a corner. Rick then gives Glenn a nod and they slip into the alley, one by one, quickly traversing the length of dark, reeking, garbage-stained pavement. Martinez is waiting for them on the lift perch, gazing down at them with business-like fervor. Come on! He motions them over. We get over this wall and we're home free. The group gathers at the base of the barricade. Martinez looks down at them. This worked out better than I thought it would, but we still need to hurry. One of the governor's goons could walk by any minute. Holding a stump, Rick looks up at him. Right. And you think we're not in a hurry to get out of here? Martinez manages a tense smile. Yeah, I guess I see your point. Behind Rick, a voice murmurs something that Martinez doesn't catch at first. Rick starts, spins, and looks at Michonne. Glenn does the same. In fact, they all turn and look at the black woman who stands in the shadows, looking grim and stoic as she stares off at the night. I'm not leaving yet, she utters in a voice so cold and committed, it could be a declaration of name, rank, and serial number. What? Glenn gawks at her. What are you talking about? Michonne stares at the young man through bottomless dark eyes. Her voice is as steady as a cleric delivering the Holy Writ. I'm going to visit the governor. Chapter 16. The mute silence that follows Michonne's declaration seems to hold the entire group wrapped for endless moments, as the implications of her pronouncement spread from person to person, from awkward glance to awkward glance, like a disease transmitted by eye contact. It goes unspoken what she has in mind for Philip Blake, although no one dares to contemplate the specifics, and that's the part that hits people first. But as the silence lengthens and turns uncomfortable in that reeking dark alley, it becomes clear to Martinez, who's gazing down at this transaction from the lift platform, that Michonne's unstoppable trajectory speaks to something darker than mere vengeance. In these brutal new times, the act of revenge, albeit a lower, baser instinct during the normal course of human events, now seems to take on an apocalyptic inevitability, as natural as shooting a walking corpse in the head or watching a loved one turn into a monster. Infected appendages are quickly severed and cauterized in this horrible new society. Evil people are no longer a thing of legend in forensic cop shows. In this new world, they are like sick cattle that simply need to be separated from the herd. They are defective parts that need to be replaced. Nobody standing at that wall that night could blame or even be surprised at Michonne's sudden and inexorable decision to circle back and find the cancerous cell festering in that town, the man who desecrated her. But that doesn't make it easier to watch. Michonne, I don't think... Rick starts to object. I'll catch up with you, she says, cutting him off. Or I won't. Michonne, I can't leave without doing this. She augurs her gaze into Rick's eyes. Go ahead. Then she turns and looks at Alice. Where does he live? At that moment, on the other side of town, nobody notices two figures slipping into the dark maw of an alley just behind the S-curve on Durand Street, about as far away from the commotion of the racetrack and the central business district as you can get and still be within the safe zone. No guards stray this far south of Main Street, and the outer concertina wire fences keep errant biters at bay. Bundled in denim, with blanket rolls under their arms, the two of them move side by side, staying low. One of them hauls a long canvas bag on a sling over his shoulder, the contents clanking softly with each bump. At the end of the alley, they squeeze through a narrow gap between a semi-truck cab and a railroad boxcar. Where in God's name are you taking me? Lily Call wants to know, following Austin across a vacant lot veiled in darkness. Austin gives her a mischievous chuckle. You'll see. Trust me. Lily steps gingerly over a patch of thorny milkweed and smells the odor of decay emanating from the adjacent forest, about 50 yards beyond the outer perimeter. The back of her neck bristles. Austin takes her arm and helps her over fallen timber and into a clearing. Be careful. Watch your step, he says, treating her with the kid gloves of an old-school father-to-be, which, to Lily, is at once annoying and kind of adorable. I'm pregnant, Austin, not an invalid. She follows him into the center of the clearing. It's a private place, sheltered by foliage and deadfall branches. There's a hollowed-out crater in the ground, scorched and petrified, where some previous visitor had dug a fire pit. Where did you learn about prenatal care? Cartoons? Very funny, wise guy. Sit down. Two ancient tree stumps provide perfect, if not exactly comfortable, places for a couple to sit and talk. The crickets roar all around them as Austin sets his bag down, and then takes a seat next to Lily. The sky above them twinkles and pulses with the kind of starry heavens only seen in rural areas. The clouds have dispersed, and the air, for once, is clear of walker stench. It smells of pine and black earth and clear night. Lily feels for the first time since as far back as she can remember, like a whole person. She feels as though they might actually have a chance to make this work. Austin is no dream father, nor is he the perfect husband by any stretch of the imagination. But he has a spark to him that touches Lily's heart. He's a decent soul, and that's enough for now. They have a lot of challenges ahead of them, a lot to work out, a lot of dangerous terrain to navigate. But she believes now that they will survive. Together. So, what's this mysterious ritual you dragged me out here for anyway? She says finally, lifting her collar and stretching her stiff neck. Her breasts are sore, and her tummy's been complaining all day. But in a strange way, she has never felt better. My brothers and I used to do this thing every Halloween, he says, indicating the canvas bag. Came up with it when we were high, I guess. But it makes sense right now for some reason. He looks at her. Did you bring those things I asked you to bring? She gives him a nod. Yeah. She pats her jacket pocket. Got 'em right here. Okay. Good. He stands, goes over to the bag, and unzips it. We usually make a fire to throw the stuff into, but I'm thinking tonight we'll try to avoid attracting the attention. He pulls out a shovel, goes over to the pit, and starts digging. Instead, we'll just bury the stuff. Lily pulls out a couple photographs she found in her wallet, a bullet from one of her Ruger pistols, and a small object wrapped in tissue paper. She lays the bundle in her lap. Okay. Ready when you are, pretty boy. Austin sets down the shovel, goes back to the bag, and pulls out a plastic 1-liter bottle and 2 paper cups. He pours dark liquid in each cup. Found some grape juice. We don't want to be drinking wine in your condition. Lily grins. You're going to drive me crazy with this Jewish mother routine. Austin ignores the comment. Are you warm enough? You need another blanket? She sighs. I'm fine, Austin. For God's sake, stop worrying about me. He hands her a cup of juice and pulls a small baggie from his pocket. Okay, I'll go first, he says. Inside the Ziploc are half an ounce of marijuana, a little metal pipe, and some rolling papers. He looks wistfully at the paraphernalia and says, "Time to put away childish things." He raises his cup. "Here's to a lifelong love affair with weed." He looks at the bag. "You got me through a lot of rough shit, but it's time to go." He tosses the pot in the hole. Lily raises her cup. "Here's to sobriety. It's a bitch, but it's for the best." They drink. "I can't believe she just left us like that," the young man named Glenn says after climbing up the wall. His body armor creaks as he stands in the wind on the edge of the lift platform, helping Alice scale the wall. The nurse is having trouble, her upper body strength not what it could be, and she labors to pull herself onto the perch. Glenn grunts with effort as he pulls her over the precipice. "Should we help her? I'm not crazy about that guy either." Rick stands on the platform behind Glenn, watching Martinez reaching down to Stevens, hoisting the doctor up the side of the barricade. "Trust me, Glenn," Rick says softly. "We'd probably just slow her down. Our safest bet is getting out now while we can." The doctor struggles up the wall and cobbles onto the platform to join the others. Martinez makes sure everyone is okay. They all take deep breaths, turning and gazing out at the wasted landscape on the other side of the rampart. They can see the neighboring woods through a narrow gap between two derelict buildings. The night wind swirls litter across empty dirt roads, the crumbling ruins of train trestles in the distance like fallen giants. The moon has risen full and high, a lunatic's moon. And the milky light puts an exclamation point on all the dark crevices, shadowy alcoves, and snaking ravines that could potentially contain biters. Rick takes another breath and gives Glenn a reassuring pat on the back. "Michonne can take care of herself," he says in a low voice. "Besides, I get the impression this is something she'd want to do alone." "Ladies first," Martinez says to Alice, indicating the far edge of the platform. Alice takes a tentative step toward the ledge, filling her lungs with breath. Martinez helps her find a foothold, and then he lowers her down the outer wall. "There you go," he says, his hands gripping her under the armpits. He accidentally brushes the sides of her breasts. "You're okay. Almost there." "Just watch the hands," Alice says, scuffing and grunting down the side of the wall, until she finally hops down to the dirt road, raising a small cloud of dust. She crouches instinctively, looking around the danger zone, her eyes wide and her hackles up. Martinez lowers Glenn down next, and then the doctor. The two men land next to Alice in the dirt, raising more dust. The silence is broken by their heavy, tense breathing and the drumming of their hearts in their ears, as each of them turn and survey the dark road ahead of them, which leads out of town and into the black oblivion of night. They hear the scuffling sounds of Martinez coming down the wall. The tall man lands with a thump, the weapon slung over his back rattling, and then he gazes back up at the parapet. "Okay, Rick, let's go." Up on the platform, Rick tucks his bandaged stump against his sternum. "This ain't gonna be easy," he murmurs. "You guys got me?" "We got you, brother." Martinez reaches up for him. "Just ease on down." Rick starts awkwardly lowering himself down the outer wall with one hand. "Jesus," Alice says, watching. "Don't drop him. Be careful." Martinez catches the 180-pound man with a grunt, easing him to the ground. Rick exhales a pained breath and looks around. Across the dirt clearing, Dr. Stevens stands in the shadows of an abandoned storefront, a weather-beaten sign hanging by a thread, with the words, "McCallum Feed and Seed." He lets out a sigh of relief and checks his satchel for any damage. The glass vials of antibiotics and painkillers remain intact, the instruments in good order. "I just can't believe we made it out of there so easily," he mumbles, checking the last of the bag's contents. "I mean, the walls aren't exactly meant to keep people in, but..." Behind the doctor, a shadow moves in the depths of the ramshackle doorway of McCallum's. Nobody notices it. nor does anybody hear the clumsy, shuffling footsteps faintly crackling over detritus and packing straps, moving toward their voices. "I'm just so damn relieved," Stevens is saying, snapping the satchel shut. The figure lurches out of the doorway, just a blur of teeth, ragged clothing, and mottled fish belly skin in the darkness, and clamps its jaws down on the closest human flesh in its path. Sometimes the victim doesn't even see it coming until it's too late, which is maybe, on some fundamental level, the most merciful way for things to go down. The creature that sinks its teeth into the nape of Dr. Stevens's exposed neck is enormous. Probably a former field hand or stock clerk accustomed to loading 60-pound bales of fertilizer or cattle feed into truck beds all day, day in and day out, and it latches down on the doctor's jugular so firmly a crowbar couldn't loosen its jaws. Clad in moldy bib overalls, its thinning hair reduced to spidery wisps on its veined white skull. It has eyes like yellow pilot lamps and makes a watery, garbled coughing sound as it roots its rotten incisors into live tissue. Dr. Stevens stiffens immediately, arms going up, eyeglasses knocked off his face, satchel flying, a horrid shriek bursting out of him in complete involuntary shock. He can't see or detect the agent of his demise, only the day-glow red shade of hot agony snapping down over his gaze. The suddenness of the attack catches everybody by surprise, the group bristling in unison, reaching for weapons, scrambling backward. Alice lets out a scream. "Dr. Stevens!" And she sees the weight of the massive biter, combined with the doctor's involuntary writhing and staggering, pull Stevens backward, off balance, and onto the ground. Stevens lands on top of his assailant with a wet grunt, the blood washing over and baptizing the giant biter underneath him in a torrent of fluid as black and oily as molasses in the darkness. In a strangled, insensate voice, the doctor jabbers, What is it? Is it one of them? Is it a biter?" The others lunge toward him, but Alice has already reached for the sentry's AK, which dangles on its strap over Martinez's shoulder, her voice booming. "Give me that! Hey!" Martinez can't tell what's happening, the tug on his shoulder accompanied by voices yelling all around him, and the other men pushing past him. Alice already has the AK up and aimed, and then she's pulling the trigger. Thank God the kid on the wall keeps his weapon locked and loaded, the safety off at all times, and the gun barks. A bouquet of fire sparks and flickers out of the short muzzle as the shell casings fly, and the tracers burst a chain of holes in the biter's temple, cheek, jaw, shoulder, and half its torso. The thing twitches and wriggles in its death throes beneath the wounded doctor, and Alice keeps firing and firing and firing until the magazine clicks empty and the slide snaps open, and she keeps firing. It's okay, Alice." The faint sound of a male voice is the first thing that penetrates her ringing ears and her traumatized brain. She lowers the gun and realizes that Dr. Stevens is addressing her from the blood-soaked heap of a funeral bier on which he lies. "Oh, God, Doctor Stevens!" She tosses the assault rifle to the ground with a clatter and goes to him. She drops to her knees and reaches for his neck, getting her fingertips wet with his arterial blood as she feels for a pulse, trying to remember the CPR lessons he provided her, her trauma unit protocols, when she realizes he's tugging at her lab coat with his blood-spattered fingers. "I'm not dying, Alice. Think of it scientifically," he utters around a mouth filling up with blood. In the darkness, his face looks almost serene. The others press in behind Alice and look on and listen closely. "I'm just evolving into a different, worse life form." The horror spreads from person to person hovering over him, from face to face, as Alice fights her tears and strokes his cheek. "Doctor, I'll still exist, Alice. In some way," he utters in barely a whisper. "Take the supplies, Alice. You'll need them. To take care of these people. Use what I taught you. Now go. Go on." Alice stares as the doctor's life drains out of him, his intelligent eyes going glassy, and then empty, gaping at the nothingness. She lets her head loll forward, but no tears will come, The desolation in her core won't allow tears to come now. Martinez stands over her, watching all this with nervous intensity. A fist of contradictory emotions grips his insides. He likes these people, the doctor and Alice, regardless of their hatred of the governor, their petty betrayals, their scheming and gossiping and sarcasm and disrespect. God help Martinez, he likes them. He feels a weird kinship with them. And now he's groping for purchase in the dark. Alice rises to her feet, picking up the satchel of medical supplies. Martinez touches her shoulder and softly says, "We gotta move." Alice nods, says nothing, stares at the bodies. "People in town will think the shots were just a guard taking out biters that got too close to the fence," Martinez goes on, his voice hurried and taut with tension. He glances over his shoulder at the other two men, who stand by, looking rattled. Martinez turns back to Alice. "But the sound will attract more biters, and we need to be gone before they get here." He looks at the doctor's slack face, stippled with blood, frozen in death. He was a good friend," Martinez adds finally. "I'll miss him too." Alice gives one last nod and then turns away. She nods at Martinez. Without another word, Martinez grabs the AK and gives a hand gesture to the others, and then leads the three survivors down a side road and on toward the town limits, their silhouettes swallowed within moments by absolute, unforgiving, implacable darkness. "Damn it, honey. Eat it!" The governor lowers himself to his hands and knees on the foul-smelling carpet of his living room, holding a severed human foot by its big toe in front of the dead little girl,